Have you ever found yourself lying awake in the dead of night, staring into the dark, feeling an unexplainable exhaustion that sleep cannot cure? Do you ever look at your life and realize that your energy, your time, and your emotional reserves have been completely drained to keep everyone else warm while your own fire is slowly dying out? We live in a society that aggressively conditions us to believe that being a good person, being endlessly accommodating, infinitely patient, and entirely selfless, is the highest peak of human virtue. We are taught to avoid conflict at all costs and to prioritize the comfort of others over our own psychological integrity. But what if this noble pursuit is actually a quiet, socially acceptable form of self-destruction? What if the relentless desire to be liked is the exact chain keeping you bound to mediocrity? Today, we are going to strip away the comforting illusions of modern morality. We are going to look through the uncompromising lens of Stoic philosophy and the ruthless realities of modern human psychology. We will uncover why being a nice person is often a disguise for weakness, and how you can forge a mind of such undeniable strength that you command profound respect rather than begging for cheap affection. 1. The illusion of virtue and the betrayal of the self. The profound journey towards psychological dominance begins by dismantling the lie of the agreeable personality. In the realm of Stoicism, the highest good is not pleasing the crowd. It is living in absolute accordance with your own rational nature. Yet, when we adopt the persona of the perpetual people-pleaser, we are not practicing virtue. We are practicing cowardice disguised as kindness. We confuse the fear of confrontation with moral superiority. Modern psychology echoes this, revealing that extreme agreeableness is often a trauma response, a desperate subconscious strategy to secure safety by ensuring no one is ever upset with us. This is a betrayal of the self. Consider the dedicated employee who works in a demanding corporate environment. Every time a colleague drops the ball, this individual steps in, sacrificing their evenings and weekends to fix mistakes that are not their own. They believe they are proving their loyalty and indispensability. However, the reality is entirely different. Management does not view them as a leader. They view them as a tool, a reliable mechanism to absorb excess stress. When the time comes for a promotion to a position of true authority, they are passed over for someone who knows how to say no, because leadership requires the enforcement of boundaries, not boundless compliance. The nice employee is left exhausted, undervalued, and paralyzed by a quiet resentment. To immediately halt this cycle of self-betrayal, you must deploy specific tactical protocols. Begin with the cognitive boundary audit. For the next 7 days, you must physically write down every instance where you agree to a request that your internal voice told you to reject, analyzing the exact fear that forced your compliance. Next, implement the delay and detach maneuver. Completely eliminate the word yes from your immediate vocabulary when faced with a new demand. Instead, use the default phrase, "I need to check my commitments and get back to you," buying yourself the necessary space to think rationally. Follow this with the value alignment filter. Before accepting any new burden, ask yourself if this task elevates your own long-term purpose, or if it merely serves to appease someone else's temporary anxiety. Finally, practice the micro-rejection strategy. Actively seek out one harmless, low-stakes situation every single day to decline a request, like refusing to take on a minor errand, simply to train your nervous system that saying no will not cause the world to collapse. 2. Prohairesis and the voluntary surrender of the mind. To understand the mechanics of power, we must master the Stoic concept of prohairesis, which is our fundamental capacity to choose our own meaning and direct our own will. Epictetus, A philosopher who understood the absolute extremes of power and slavery taught that while the external world can imprison your body, your prohairesis must remain untouchable. However, the nice person voluntarily hands over their prohairesis to the outside world. They allow the moods, opinions, and demands of other people to dictate their internal weather. If someone is upset with them, their day is ruined. If someone praises them, they feel momentarily worthy. This is not a life of freedom. It is a life of psychological servitude. Mark Manson astutely points out that if your self-worth is tethered to the constant validation of others, you do not own yourself. Imagine a person deeply embedded in a social circle or a family dynamic where they are known as the peacemaker. Whenever a conflict erupts, everyone turns to them to mediate, to soothe egos, and to absorb the toxic fallout. This person believes they are the glue holding the group together. But what happens when this peacemaker faces their own personal crisis? The group, accustomed only to taking from them, scatters. The peacemaker discovers in their darkest hour that they have traded their own mental stability for the illusion of being needed. They surrendered their mind to manage the minds of others. To reclaim your psychological sovereignty, you must execute precise defensive strategies. First, deploy the validation. Fasting protocol. For 48 hours, completely cease all attempts to explain your actions, justify your choices, or seek approval for your decisions from anyone, observing the uncomfortable withdrawal symptoms of your ego. Next, utilize the mirror of indifference technique. When someone attempts to dump their emotional chaos onto you, reflect their energy back with absolute neutrality, offering no solutions and no excessive sympathy, forcing them to carry their own weight. Implement the core citadel. Meditation. Spend 10 minutes every morning visualizing your mind as an impenetrable fortress. When external demands or opinions attempt to breach the walls, watch them shatter against the stone of your own self-defined values. Lastly, engage the discomfort tolerance drill. Intentionally place yourself in a situation where someone might slightly misunderstand you or be mildly annoyed with you, and practice sitting in that discomfort without rushing to fix their perception of you. 3. The hidden aggression of unspoken expectations. We must now confront the darkest consequence of extreme agreeableness, the poison of silent resentment. Seneca observed that humans are uniquely flawed in how they value their resources. We fiercely protect our money, yet we allow anyone to steal our time and energy. When you constantly act as the savior, you are not generating genuine harmony. You are opening a hidden ledger of debt. You make endless sacrifices, assuming that the world will recognize your nobility and eventually return the favor. But the world does not operate on an unspoken system of karma. When people inevitably fail to read your mind and reciprocate your unspoken sacrifices, your kindness curdles into a deep, passive-aggressive anger. You become a martyr. Consider the individual in a romantic relationship who entirely suppresses their own desires, their hobbies, their preferred career path, their friendships, to perfectly mold themselves to their partner's life. They do this believing it is the ultimate expression of love. But years pass, and the partner, oblivious to sacrifices they never explicitly asked for, goes about their life normally. The sacrificing partner eventually explodes in a fit of bitterness, listing years of suppressed grievances. They built a cage of their own design, locked themselves inside, and then blamed their partner for not giving them the key. True Stoic virtue requires radical honesty, not covert contracts. To dismantle this toxic internal ledger, you must apply rigorous restructuring. Begin with the covert contract. Eradication. Write down 3 things you currently do for others while secretly expecting something in return. Immediately stop doing these things or continue doing them with the absolute acceptance that you will never be thanked. Next, execute the radical articulation strategy. Force yourself to explicitly state your needs and desires in your relationships, using clear, unapologetic language, replacing "I don't mind" with "this is what I prefer." Follow this with the anger alchemy protocol. The next time you feel a surge of resentment towards someone you are helping, recognize it not as a flaw in them, but as a glaring alarm system telling you that your own boundaries have been breached by your own compliance. Finally, practice the self-prioritization mandate. Treat your own personal goals and restorative time with the exact same ruthless commitment you would give to an emergency call from a loved one. If your cup is empty, you have nothing of value to offer the world anyway. 4. The law of scarcity and the destruction of value. To command genuine respect in a chaotic world, one must understand the intersection of human psychology and the brutal laws of economics. The law of scarcity dictates that the more available something is, the less it is valued. Water is essential for life, yet we pay nothing for it because it is abundant. Diamonds are practically useless, yet they command empires because they are rare. The good person makes themselves as common as water. By being always accessible, always ready to drop their own plans, and always the first to reply, they completely obliterate their own perceived value. Robert Greene's laws of power warn against the danger of excessive presence. When you're always there, you become invisible. Think of the friend who is always the first to text back, the one who is always available to hang out, the one who never says they are busy. Initially, they are appreciated, but very quickly, they are taken for granted. Their presence is no longer a privilege, it is an expectation. When they finally do need help, or when they attempt to assert a boundary, the social circle reacts with confusion and anger, treating the sudden unavailability not as a right, but as an insult. The overly available person has trained their environment to treat them as a disposable resource. To reverse this dynamic and rebuild your inherent value, you must enforce strict access controls. First, implement the artificial scarcity maneuver. Even if your schedule is entirely clear, deliberately decline 1 out of every 3 social or professional requests, stating simply that you have prior commitments, forcing others to recognize that your time is a gated resource. Next, utilize the communication blackout window. Establish a strict 4-hour block every single day where your phone is on airplane mode and you are completely unreachable to the outside world, conditioning people to realize they do not own your attention. Follow this with the strategic withdrawal tactic. In group settings or meetings, intentionally speak less than everyone else. When you do speak, let it be measured, final, and profound, ensuring that your words carry the heavy weight of rarity. Finally, practice the reward of absence. Periodically remove yourself from your usual social circles for a few days to focus entirely on your own growth, allowing your absence to remind people of the value of your presence. 5. Ataraxia and the power of being disliked. The zenith of Stoic mastery is the achievement of ataraxia, a state of robust, unshakable tranquility. It is the absolute stillness of the mind amidst the roaring noise of the world. You can never, under any circumstances, achieve ataraxia if your internal peace relies on being liked by everyone you meet. Human beings are inherently flawed, deeply insecure, and perpetually projecting their own unresolved traumas onto others. When you make it your mission to be universally liked, you are trying to solve an impossible mathematical equation. You must realize that being disliked by certain people is not a failure, it is a badge of honor. It proves that you stand for something. Marcus Aurelius faced critics, traitors, and enemies, yet he understood that their hatred was their burden to carry, not his. Consider the entrepreneur who decides to pivot their business model to something highly unconventional. Their peers mock them, their family expresses deep disappointment and warns them of failure. The good person would fold under this pressure, returning to the safe, socially approved path to restore harmony. But the individual aiming for true greatness views the disapproval not as a stop sign, but as confirmation that they have broken free from the herd. They accept the friction, knowing that the people who criticize the loudest are usually the ones most terrified of their own unlived potential. To forge this armor of indifference, you must execute the final set of protocols for this phase. Begin with the disapproval desensitization drill. Intentionally state an unpopular but deeply held philosophical opinion in a casual conversation, and simply watch the disagreement unfold without feeling the slightest urge to defend, apologize, or soften your stance. Next, implement the projection reversal technique. When someone directs unprovoked anger or criticism at you, silently remind yourself that their reaction is a documentary about their own internal chaos, not a reflection of your reality. Follow this with the ataraxia anchor. When you feel the biological spike of anxiety caused by someone's displeasure, physically slow your breathing to a 5-second inhale and a 7-second exhale, anchoring your mind entirely in your physical body rather than their emotional state. Finally, adopt the enemy audit. Look at the people who currently dislike you or criticize your boundaries and ask yourself a brutal question. Do I actually respect these people enough to care about their judgment? If the answer is no, their opinion is officially deleted from your psychological mainframe. 6. The magnetism of the shadow and the danger of harmlessness. To transcend the fragile identity of the good person, you must confront a profound psychological reality. Being harmless is not a virtue, it is a profound vulnerability. Carl Jung, the legendary psychoanalyst, introduced the concept of the shadow. The dark, aggressive and selfish parts of our psyche that we actively repress to fit into polite society. The overly agreeable person has buried their shadow so deeply that they have castrated their own capacity for self-defense. They confuse inability to cause harm with being peaceful, but as modern thinkers remind us, a truly peaceful person is one who is highly capable of immense destruction, but consciously chooses to keep that sword sheathed. The Stoics understood this balance. They did not advocate for weakness, but for controlled, directed strength. Think of a manager leading a critical project who has a notoriously toxic, underperforming employee on their team. Because the manager wants to be seen as nice and compassionate, they refuse to fire this individual. They absorb the extra work and make excuses for the toxic behavior. What is the result? The truly hard-working employees become demoralized, the project suffers, and the entire team loses respect for the manager. The manager's desire to be good to one toxic person was actually an act of cruelty to the rest of the team. True leadership requires the integration of your shadow. You must be capable of looking someone in the eye and delivering devastating news with absolute calmness. To begin integrating this necessary darkness, you must utilize the Shadow Integration Protocol. Spend 20 minutes writing down the 3 most ruthless, self-serving thoughts you have had this week, acknowledging them without judgment, and realizing that this aggression is the exact energy needed to enforce your boundaries. Next, apply the surgical empathy maneuver. When someone tries to manipulate your emotions with a sob story, offer them intellectual understanding rather than emotional absorption, stating calmly, "I see why that is difficult for you, but my decision stands." Follow this with the discomfort catalyst drill. Intentionally initiate a necessary but highly uncomfortable conversation you have been avoiding, viewing the resulting social tension not as a threat, but as a cleansing fire that burns away the weak dynamics in your life. Finally, practice the outcome detachment tactic. Make a decision that you know will disappoint someone and physically walk away from the situation, refusing to stay and manage their emotional reaction to your boundary. 7. The currency of respect versus the inflation of affection. We must now navigate the critical economic difference between affection and respect. Affection is an inflationary currency. It is cheap, easily given, and instantly withdrawn the moment you stop pleasing the crowd. Respect, however, is the gold standard of human interaction. It is heavy, it is rare, and it is forged only in the fires of consistency and unyielding boundaries. Epictetus taught that we should not seek to be loved by fools, but to be respected by those who understand the weight of virtue. When you act as the eternal people-pleaser, you are printing endless amounts of cheap affection, hyperinflating your social value until you are completely worthless in the eyes of others. You become predictable, and predictability in the realm of power is synonymous with weakness. Consider the classic dynamic in modern dating. The nice individual agrees with every opinion their partner has, changes their schedule instantly to accommodate dates, and never voices a dissenting thought. They believe they are building a perfect, frictionless romance. Instead, they are killing attraction at its root. The partner quickly becomes bored, feeling as though they are dating a mirror rather than a fully realized human being. Attraction thrives on the friction of two distinct identities colliding, not on the total surrender of one to the other. To transition your life from the pursuit of cheap affection to the accumulation of absolute respect, you must implement rigorous new standards. Begin with the frame dominance exercise. In your next debate or disagreement, deliberately hold your physical ground. Do not lean away, do not break eye contact, and do not raise your pitch at the end of your sentences to seek validation. Next, execute the friction, welcoming protocol. Actively disagree with a minor opinion presented by someone you respect, calmly stating your opposing view to demonstrate that you are a sovereign mind, not an echo chamber. Follow this with the yes detox strategy. For an entire week, refuse to automatically agree with complaints or gossip in your workplace or social circle, meeting the negativity with a blank, unreadable silence. Finally, adopt the value baseline assessment. Evaluate your top 5 relationships and ask yourself if they are built on mutual respect for each other's boundaries or merely on your endless willingness to be convenient. If it is the latter, begin the immediate withdrawal of your excess energy. 8. The myth of the savior complex and the theft of pain. One of the most insidious traps for the good person is the savior complex. You look at the chaotic lives of your friends, your family, or your co-workers, and you feel an overwhelming, almost arrogant urge to fix them. Stoicism teaches the concept of sympathia, the understanding that all humans are deeply connected, but it never advocates for carrying the burdens that belong to someone else. When you constantly rush in to save people from the consequences of their own terrible decisions, you are not being a hero, you are being a thief, you are stealing their amor fati. You are robbing them of the exact pain and failure the universe designed to wake them up and force their evolution. Think of a parent or a devoted friend who continuously bails out a loved one from massive financial debt caused by reckless gambling or irresponsibility. The savior works extra hours, drains their own savings, and ruins their own peace of mind to pay off the debts. They think this is the ultimate act of loyalty. But the reckless individual never feels the crushing weight of their actions. They never hit the rock bottom required for genuine psychological transformation. By being nice, the savior has guaranteed that the destructive behavior will repeat forever. To permanently dismantle this toxic dynamic, you must deploy strict countermeasures. First, implement the responsibility reversion tactic. The next time someone comes to you in a panic over a crisis they created, do not offer a single solution. Instead, look at them calmly and ask, "That sounds incredibly difficult. What is your plan to fix it?" Next, utilize the savior complex fast. Identify the one person in your life whose problems you solve the most, and for the next 30 days, offer them zero unsolicited advice and zero financial or logistical rescues, forcing them to face their own reflection. Follow this with the compassionate detachment maneuver. Learn to sit quietly with someone in their pain without trying to desperately inject positivity or fix the situation, understanding that bearing witness is often the only healthy support you can provide. Finally, practice the boundary reinforcement drill. When a chronic crisis creator demands your immediate intervention, politely but firmly state that you are unavailable to engage, teaching them that your emergency room is officially closed to self-inflicted wounds. 9. The ultimate leverage, the willingness to walk away. In the brutal arithmetic of human relationships and professional dynamics, there is only one true metric of absolute power: the genuine, unblinking willingness to walk away. If you cannot walk away from a negotiation, a relationship, or a job, you are not a participant, you are a hostage. The good person is terrified of walking away because it feels mean, it causes conflict, and it shatters their self-image of endless loyalty. Seneca taught that he who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man. In the modern context, he who fears loss will never command true leverage. You must mentally prepare for the end of things to truly value them, but also to prevent them from owning you. Imagine a highly skilled freelancer negotiating a major contract with a corporate client. The client, sensing the freelancer's desperation to be accommodating and easy to work with, aggressively demands a 50% price reduction and double the deliverables. The nice freelancer, terrified of losing the opportunity and wanting to maintain a good relationship, agrees. They spend the next 6 months overworked, underpaid, and deeply resentful. Now, contrast this with the sovereign professional. When presented with the exact same insulting terms, they do not argue, they do not get angry, and they do not try to explain their value. They simply smile, pack up their documents, state that the terms are not aligned with their standards, and walk out the door. 9 times out of 10, the client panics and meets their price, because true power recognizes true power. To forge this untouchable leverage in your own life, you must utilize precise mental algorithms. Begin with the walkaway simulation. Pick the most important relationship or job in your life right now, and spend 15 minutes writing down the exact step-by-step survival plan you would execute if you lost it tomorrow, proving to your brain that you will survive the loss. Next, execute the absolute zero compromise. Identify one core professional or personal boundary that you have been flexible on, and from this moment forward, treat it as a wall of solid steel. If someone pushes it, the negotiation ends immediately. Follow this with the abundance mindset anchor. Whenever you feel the panic of potential loss creeping in, actively list 3 entirely different avenues, people, or opportunities available to you in the wider world, destroying the illusion of scarcity. Finally, practice the silence of departure. Tactic: when an environment becomes undeniably toxic, do not announce your exit. Do not write a dramatic manifesto, and do not seek closure. Simply remove your energy, your presence, and your attention, letting your sudden absence be the final, deafening statement. 10. The rebirth of the unbreakable sovereign. We have reached the summit. The transition from the good person to the unbreakable sovereign is complete. You have realized that compliance is a disease, that your proheresis is sacred, and that true respect requires the courage to be disliked. This final stage is the synthesis of ancient Stoic wisdom and the harsh realities of modern power. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are the architect of your reality. You no longer enter a room hoping people will approve of you. You enter a room to see if the people inside meet your standards. The sovereign does not lack empathy. Rather, their empathy is a conscious, guarded gift, given only to those who have proven themselves worthy of it. Think of the individual who has undergone this profound transformation. They look back at their former self, the anxious, over-accommodating, exhausted people-pleaser, and they feel a distant compassion for that mental prison. Now, when they face disrespect, their heart rate does not spike. When they are excluded from a social event, they feel relief, not rejection. They walk with the slow, deliberate pace of someone who knows exactly who they are and what they will tolerate. They have become a fortress of calm in a world addicted to chaos. To lock this identity into your permanent psychology, you must execute the final directives. First, deploy the Identity Reauthoring Protocol. Write a one-page manifesto declaring the death of your nice persona, explicitly listing the behaviors you will never tolerate again from yourself or others, and read it every morning. Next, implement the daily sovereignty audit. At the end of every day, ask yourself one question. Did I make my decisions today out of a genuine desire or out of a fear of someone else's reaction? Follow this with the Untouchable Citadel visualization. Before entering any high-stress environment, close your eyes and visualize a physical barrier of glass between you and the rest of the world. You can see their chaos, but it cannot touch your skin. Finally, practice the ruthless prioritization. Execution. Cut out the bottom 20% of your social obligations and toxic acquaintances immediately, creating a massive void of time and energy, and fill that void exclusively with the pursuit of your own ultimate mastery. The era of bleeding yourself dry to keep others warm is over. You have seen the dark truth. Being endlessly accommodating does not make you a saint. It makes you a target. The world does not respect the person who bends to every breeze. It respects the mountain that refuses to move. I will not ask you to like this video, and I certainly will not ask you to subscribe out of some automated habit. If you are terrified of the friction required to take your power back, if you prefer the warm, comfortable delusion of being a people-pleaser, then close this screen immediately. Return to your chains. But if you have decided to cross the threshold, if you are ready to kill the weak version of yourself and rebuild in absolute silence, then your initiation has just begun. The map to your next stage of dominance is waiting for you in the video on your screen right now. The choice is yours. Step through or step back.